I'm 21 years old, and last month my entire life flipped upside down because of something I never thought I'd be dealing with. My best friend secretly moving in with my mom while I was away at college. It all started when I came home for a surprise visit. I had been away for nearly 4 months, and I hadn't told anyone I was coming back early because I wanted to surprise my family. When I walked through the front door, I immediately noticed a pair of sneakers by the entryway that I recognized instantly. They belonged to Ryan, my best friend since middle school. At first, I didn't think much of it. Ryan had been to our house a million times before. Maybe he was just hanging out. But when I dragged my suitcase upstairs, I realized something was off. His clothes weren't just tossed around like a guest's would be. There were drawers filled with his stuff. His laptop charger was plugged in by the desk in the hallway, and the biggest red flag? A toothbrush next to my mom's in the bathroom. That's when it hit me. Ryan wasn't just visiting, he was living there. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind racing. There was no way, no possible way, that my best friend, who had spent years joking with me about how my mom was off limits, was actually in some kind of relationship with her. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe he'd just been crashing here while I was gone, but the toothbrush kept replaying in my head. Before I could fully process, I heard footsteps. My mom's voice called out my name, surprised and excited, asking why I didn't tell her I was coming home, and right behind her was Ryan. He looked pale when he saw me, almost like he'd been caught in the middle of something he couldn't explain, and in that moment I realized my gut wasn't wrong. The second I saw Ryan standing there behind my mom, my stomach dropped. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, but the way he avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. He looked guilty, like a kid who got caught stealing cookies from the jar. I tried to play it cool at first, pretending nothing was wrong. I hugged my mom, forced a smile, and asked how things had been since I left for school. She started rambling about work, the house, the dog, normal stuff. But Ryan stayed quiet, leaning against the wall like he didn't know whether to run or stay put. Finally, I turned to him and asked why his stuff was all over the place. He laughed nervously, said he'd been crashing here for a bit because his apartment lease fell through. That explanation might have worked if I hadn't already seen his clothes in drawers upstairs, and his toothbrush lined up next to hers. I didn't call him out on the spot. Instead, I just nodded and acted like I believed him, but inside my chest felt like it was caving in. I couldn't stop thinking about how many times I had told Ryan everything, about my family, my struggles, my secrets, and now here he was, entangled with my mom in some way I didn't even want to picture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing them talking and laughing downstairs, and it made my skin crawl. Every time I tried to convince myself maybe I was imagining things, I'd hear her call him by a nickname she never used for anyone else. The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit in the dark anymore. I went straight downstairs, sat them both down at the kitchen table, and demanded to know what the hell was going on. And that's when my mom dropped the bomb. When I asked them directly, my mom didn't even hesitate. She looked me in the eye and said, "Ryan and I are together," just like that. She was telling me the weather was going. No shame, no pause, just the raw truth I wanted to hear. I felt the air get sucked out of the room. Ryan shifted in his chair, rubbing the back of his neck to disappear, but he didn't. My best friend, the person I'd trusted since I was 12, just sat there, letting my mom carry the weight of the confession, while I tried to process the fact that my entire world had just turned inside out. I asked them how long this had been going on, and when my mom said a few months, my jaw literally dropped. That lined up exactly with when I had left for school. The timeline made me sick. The whole time I thought Ryan was being distant because of school and work. He was actually wrapped up in some secret relationship with my mother. I asked Ryan why he didn't tell me. His excuse was that he didn't want to hurt me, which made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. How was hiding it supposed to hurt less? My mom tried to justify it too. She said she hadn't expected it to happen, that they just connected after I left, and that she didn't want me to find out until I was ready. Ready? How was I ever supposed to be ready to hear that my mom and my best friend had been sneaking around behind my back? The worst part was when she said she was happy again for the first time in years, and that Ryan treated her better than anyone she'd ever been with. I couldn't believe it. My mom was actually defending this relationship like it was some fairy tale, while I sat there feeling betrayed by two of the most important people in my life. I couldn't even speak anymore. My hands were shaking, and I just walked away from the table. But as I went upstairs, I heard Ryan's voice, low, guilty, saying he wanted to talk to me alone, and that's when I knew there was more he wasn't telling me. Later that afternoon, Ryan knocked on my bedroom door. I wanted to ignore him, but curiosity and anger kept me from staying silent. I told him to come in, and he did, looking like a kid about to confess to breaking a window. He started by saying he never meant for any of this to happen. That's always the line, right? It just happened. But then he admitted the part that made me want to punch a hole in the wall. He said it started before I even left for college. Apparently, a few weeks before I moved out, he and my mom had been texting behind my back. At first, it was about me, checking in, making sure I was doing okay. But then the conversations shifted. Late-night talks, venting sessions, sharing things they said they couldn't share with anyone else. And then one night, when I'd been out with friends, he stayed over and it happened. He swore it was a one-time mistake at first, but then he admitted it didn't stop there. By the time I left for school, they were already seeing each other regularly. He told me he wanted to tell me, but my mom convinced him not to. She thought it would destroy me right before starting college. I couldn't even look at him. All I could think about were the years of friendship, all the times we joked about our futures, the loyalty I thought we had. He knew exactly how much I trusted him, and he still did this anyway. What really got me, though, was when he said he still valued our friendship. Like, what part of betraying me in the worst possible way counted as valuing it? I told him to get out of my room, and for once, he actually listened, but the damage was already done. Now I wasn't just furious, I was humiliated, because it wasn't just happening while I was gone. It had started while I was right there under the same roof, and that left me with a burning question I couldn't shake. If they were willing to hide this for months, what else had they been hiding from me? I couldn't stop replaying Ryan's words in my head. The betrayal stung enough, but the part about it starting before I left, that cut deeper than anything. My mom and my best friend had been lying to my face for months, smiling at me, eating dinner with me, and then sneaking behind my back. I couldn't let it rest. That night, I decided to snoop. I know it wasn't the most mature move, but after what they'd done, I didn't feel bad about crossing lines. While they were downstairs watching TV, I went into my mom's room. I needed to know how far this went. What I found made me feel like the floor was tilting under me. In her nightstand drawer, right under a stack of old receipts, was a photo strip from one of those cheesy mall photo booths. Ryan and my mom smiling, kissing, making goofy faces. And the date printed on the bottom? 2 weeks before I left for college. I felt sick. I shoved it back, closed the drawer, and went straight to my own room. My hands were trembling as I pulled out my phone. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, because I felt like I was drowning in secrets. But who could I even go to? My friends all knew Ryan. My extended family would lose it on my mom. I was torn between blowing it all up and pretending I hadn't seen it. The next morning, I got my answer without even asking for it. Over breakfast, my mom casually mentioned that she and Ryan were thinking of going public soon, like it was some casual relationship she could announce on Facebook. She said she didn't want me to feel blindsided, but that she deserved to be happy and wasn't going to hide forever. I wanted to scream. Going public? Like they were some normal couple? She had no idea how humiliating this already felt for me. That's when I realized they weren't planning to slow down or stop. This wasn't some fling. They were serious. And if they were serious, I had to know just how far they were planning to take this. When my mom said they were planning to go public, I thought it meant a Facebook post or maybe showing up together at a restaurant. I didn't realize it was so much bigger than that until I overheard them talking one night. I couldn't sleep, so I was lying in bed when I heard voices drifting up from the living room. They weren't arguing. They were planning. At first, it was about groceries, bills, boring stuff. But then Ryan's voice got lower, more serious. He asked my mom if she'd thought about what moving in together permanently would mean. My chest tightened. Permanently? He was already living there. What more could that mean? And then my mom said the words that made me sit up in bed, heart pounding. She said, "If this works out, I don't see why we wouldn't make it official. It's not like I'm getting any younger." Make it official? My brain twisted around the meaning. Marriage. My mom was actually talking to my best friend. I wanted to storm downstairs and end the whole thing but I froze. I just sat in the dark, staring at the wall, trying not to throw up. They weren't just messing around. They weren't just sneaking around for some thrill. They were planning a future together. The next morning, I confronted Ryan directly. I asked him point blank if he was planning on marrying my mom. He didn't laugh, didn't deny it. He just looked at me and said, "Keeps making her happy?" Yeah, maybe. That was the moment it all broke for me. The idea of walking into my own kitchen one having to call my best friend stepdad made me feel like I'd in some twisted knot. I thought betrayal was bad, but hearing they were planning life together, that crushed me in a way I can't even explain. And that's when I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to do something. I couldn't shake the image of Ryan slipping a ring on my mom's finger someday. The thought of their whispers becoming wedding vows made me feel like I was living in the middle of some sick joke. I decided right then that I wasn't going to sit by and let it happen. My first move was to tell someone. I needed backup. I called my aunt, the one person in my family who has never sugarcoated anything. She's blunt, sharp, and has zero patience for nonsense. When I told her what was happening, she didn't even believe me. She laughed like I was making it up. But when I explained everything, the toothbrush, the photo booth picture, overhearing their talk about marriage, her tone changed fast. She was furious. She said she was driving over the next morning, and she didn't care if it caused a blowout. My mom needed to be confronted, and Ryan needed to be out of the house. The next day, my aunt showed up at our front door at 9 a.m. sharp. She didn't even say hello. She walked straight into the kitchen, slammed her keys on the counter, and asked my mom if she'd lost her mind. The whole house went silent. My mom tried to brush it off, saying she didn't owe anyone an explanation for her happiness. But my aunt wasn't having it. She ripped into her, saying she was humiliating me and destroying her own family by shacking up with someone young enough to be her son. Ryan just sat there, staring at the floor like a coward. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend her. He just stayed quiet while my aunt tore the room apart with her words. When it was over, my aunt turned to me and said I had two choices: either pack my things and come live with her until I could get back to school, or stay and let this circus drag me down with it. For the first time, I realized I had an escape. When my aunt gave me the choice, it felt like someone had cracked open a window in a room I'd been suffocating. For weeks, I'd been trapped between rage and humiliation, watching the two people I trusted most turn into strangers. Now I had a way out. That afternoon, I started packing. I didn't announce it. I didn't ask permission. I just grabbed my suitcase from the closet and began throwing clothes into it. The sound must have carried, because not long after, Ryan appeared at my door. He leaned on the frame, arms crossed, looking nervous but trying to act calm. He asked where I was going, like he didn't already know. I told him I was leaving. Simple as that. He tried to talk me down, saying I was being dramatic, that I didn't need to run away just because things were different now. Different. That was his word for it. Not betrayal. Not a mess. Just different. When my mom showed up a few minutes later, she was angry. Not sad, not apologetic. Angry. She said I was punishing her for being happy, that I was letting my aunt poison me against her. She even had the audacity to suggest that someday, when I was older, I'd understand. I snapped. I told her there was nothing to understand about sleeping with my best friend, that no matter how she tried to dress it up as love, it would always be betrayal to me. Her face went cold after that. She told me if I walked out that door, I shouldn't expect to come back until I was ready to accept her choices. I zipped my suitcase shut, grabbed the handle, and told her she might not see me again for a very long time. Then I walked out, my aunt waiting in the driveway with the engine running. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house I grew up in, now tainted with secrets I couldn't unhear. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. People like Ryan don't just disappear quietly. I thought leaving the house would give me peace, but it didn't last long. 3 days after I moved into my aunt's place, Ryan showed up at her front door. It was evening, and my aunt and I were in the living room. She went to answer it, thinking it was a neighbor. There he was, standing on the porch, his hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket, looking like a kid caught in a... My aunt immediately, but he asked to speak. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside. I didn't want him in my aunt's house, staining the place that felt safe. He started talking fast, saying my mom was a wreck since I left, that she hadn't eaten properly in days, that she cried herself to sleep. He said she didn't deserve to be abandoned by me just because I didn't approve of who she loved. And then he turned it personal. He said he never wanted to lose me as a friend, that what happened between him and my mom didn't change how much he cared about me. He actually tried to convince me that in some twisted way, this could all work out. I stood there numb, staring at the person I thought I knew and realizing he was gone. He wasn't Ryan anymore. He was someone who had crossed a line so deep it couldn't ever be uncrossed. I told him straight up that I didn't care if my mom was crying herself to sleep. She made her choice, and so did he, and those choices meant they lost me. He looked gutted for a moment, like he hadn't expected me to be so final, but then his expression changed, hard, sharp. He said, "You'll regret this someday. You'll see we were right." And with that, he walked back to his car and drove off. I stood on the porch long after he was gone, my chest tight, wondering if that was a threat or just desperation. Either way, I knew one thing. I couldn't go back. Not now, not ever. After Ryan drove off, I felt this strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I had finally said what needed to be said. Dread because I knew neither he nor my mom was going to let this go quietly. Over the next week, I got message after message. My mom sent long texts about how she loved me but wouldn't apologize for being with Ryan. She begged me to be happy for her. Ryan's messages were different, shorter, sharper. Some were apologies, some were guilt trips, and one simply said, "You'll understand one." I stopped responding. My aunt told me I had to protect peace. Every reply just dragged me deeper into their, and I wanted out. The real breaking point, my dad, who's been divorced for years, called me after hearing through the great. He didn't yell, he didn't judge. He just said, "You don't deserve to carry their choices on your shoulders." Hearing that broke something open in me. For the first time since all this started, I felt like someone was firmly on my side. So, I made a decision. I blocked Ryan. I blocked my mom. I packed up my things again, but this time it wasn't out of panic. It was a step forward. I moved back into my dorm early, even though the semester hadn't started yet. Being there, surrounded by strangers who knew nothing about the chaos at home, gave me space to breathe. The pain hasn't gone away. I still think about how easily Ryan betrayed me, how my mom put her happiness above her own kid. Sometimes I wonder if they're still together, if they really think they've built something real. But then I remind myself it doesn't matter anymore. That's their mess to live in, not mine. I lost a best friend and a mom in the same breath, but what I gained was clarity. I know now that family isn't always about blood, and friendship isn't always about time. It's about loyalty, and when those things vanish, the only way forward is to cut ties and protect yourself. So that's where I am now. Hurt, but free, and maybe that's enough.